Well, I took my hat off for this one because it's going to be a good one. There was a time when telling someone you watched anime would change how they looked at you. A lot of you may be too young for that, but if they were into anime around that same time, late 90s, early 2000s, it was weird, it was childish, foreign, sometimes all three. Nowadays, athletes talk about Dragon Ball. People who work out in the gym, their biggest inspiration is Goku. You know, rappers reference Naruto, One Piece, etc. Netflix promotes tons of anime and has original anime produced by Netflix on their site. Major brands will even compete for collaborations with certain animes. We see a ton more like the pops, everything like that. It's basically become very mainstream and normal to see anime and talk about anime. Trading cards kind of feel like they're going the same way that anime did. What we're doing, we're kind of moving through that similar transition to where shiny cardboard, people used to kind of get mocked for it, especially in Magic. Even, in 2016 when I was playing, dude, even I kind of felt like it. I was like, dude, you just spent $100 on one card. Your commander deck is $1,000, right? Like, I even kind of experienced, and to some degree we probably all do, but it was one of those things where why in the hell would you spend that much money on cardboard? It sometimes doesn't make sense to us, and so it very much didn't make sense to a ton of people. And so that's happened all the way in the past to where it was stigmatized, to where you're kind of dumb for spending so much money on Pokemon. Now, now that shiny cardboard is being graded. It's being collected. It's being streamed. It's being invested in. People are collabing. You have Logan Paul, all these people searching for the one-of-a-kind Pokemon card or whatever they're doing, with the Korokoro Pikachu, I think they're doing now. It's huge. Nowadays, it's not, oh, wow, you spent $100 on that piece of cardboard? It's more like, shit, dude, you only spent $100 on that piece of cardboard? It's crazy how it's changed, and it's actually changed quite rapidly. I would even say more rapidly than how anime changed. The whole point of this video is to answer the question, what happens when a niche hobby becomes mainstream? And then we kind of have to also answer, when that hobby becomes mainstream, is that future, is that what we want? Or are we losing something special by this hobby or by TCGs going mainstream? And so let's get into it. Why do I feel that anime and TCGs are so similar in this shift? I have a graphic that I can kind of show you guys as well. I'll pop it up on screen. But ultimately, anime had hits, or kind of like a gateway drug. Anime had gateway shows. Pokemon, Dragon Ball Z, Naruto, Yu-Gi-Oh!, One Piece. Those are all animes that existed way back, late 90s, early 2000s that still exist today. TCGs are the same thing. Pokemon, Magic. I think there was a One Piece, TCG back then. But Pokemon and Magic, and even One Piece, they're still around. They're still huge. What happened with these and why they're so similar is there's IPs in there that have stood the test of time and that still exist. We have these old IPs that currently are still super strong, but as well as access improved to those IPs. With anime, we got better streaming, better localization. The internet just became better for that. Online or global marketplaces allowed everybody to buy what they want from wherever it was, and you didn't have to have a local store having your anime stuff. And that's kind of the same with TCGs. Is before, sometimes it was hard to trade. Me, I lived in a small town, small community. I was the only one into Pokemon besides me and my brothers. Only one. Nobody liked Pokemon. I couldn't play the game besides with them. I couldn't talk about anime. I couldn't do anything. Me out of the hundreds of kids in my high school, and it was only me. That's crazy. And so, with access improving, marketplaces, content, etc., well, now I can reach out to this. Oh, there's this store. There's this. Oh, there's TCG Marketplace. I can sell my card. I can trade. It made it so that the people who were then isolated now had a way to interact with the community besides just themselves. Things like Pokemon Go. When that came out in 2016, that was huge. It made people realize that there was more people like them, because even before 2016, Pokemon was, yeah, popular and huge, but still more very much for kids. But when Pokemon Go came out and people realized, you could tell who was playing Pokemon Go pretty easily. And so you started to see all of these people, and Pokemon Go really helped people realize that Pokemon wasn't as niche as they thought it was. That didn't do much for the TCG yet, but because there was more hype in Pokemon, that did start to build into other facets of Pokemon, which was partially the TCG. And as well, COVID, TCG Pocket, all those things led people to realizing that there was a bigger community out there. And when you realize that there's more support for your hobby, for your community, it makes you more stable, makes you more confident, which then in turn makes you want to stay in it, get deeper into it, etc. Pokemon Go was a huge catalyst for me and is part of the reason why I am back in the TCG. When Pokemon Go came out, I was in college. So was my older brother. My younger brother was still in high school. I had a couple friends. I had my uncle there. So when it came out, I did it with them, and there was a huge community. And so, I mean, I still play Pokemon Go today, just not as much. But that was a huge thing. I hadn't played a Pokemon game since I played Omega Ruby. But ultimately, I hadn't played a new Pokemon game for a long time. And I hadn't purchased a Pokemon card for a long time as well. But Pokemon Go was a really big catalyst in getting me kind of back into the Pokemon hobby as a whole. I always liked it, but it wasn't something I was actively doing until Pokemon Go came out. What Pokemon Go did was it gave the social proof that the Pokemon hobby was lacking. Before then, it was still very much for kids. It was still very much, while there were people in it, like the ones of us who grew up with it, it was still something that we had kind of gravitated away from. It just wasn't really in the social radar. But when Pokemon Go came out, that shifted the sentiment that we had about Pokemon. That 2016 release and that summer is what started to push Pokemon into the mainstream, because it finally gave people the social proof that, hey, my hobby in the past, it's okay. There's hundreds of people out there in the streets catching fake Pokemon. It's okay for me to like this. It's okay for me to look at my collection and maybe open some Pokemon cards. It was the opening of a can of worms, I guess you could say. More adults got into it, start having their kids and other people get into it. We have influencers online, like Logan Paul, like him or hate him, reaches a lot of people. Like, this is something that's there, and it gets more people interested, and because there's just social proof that it exists and that it works. What happens is businesses, and just people in general, not even big businesses, but once something starts to become less niche and more mainstream, is people find ways to monetize it. And that is a good thing overall, because the more money in any hobby or anything generally makes something better. But this is where anime and TCGs start to diverge in their similarities. With anime, the more money is really good for the hobby and the niche overall because it signals to the companies that, hey, this is safe. They're willing to invest more money, more merch, more localization. They're also willing to take a bet on more anime that are smaller and get them also localized and sent over. Netflix wouldn't have gotten rights to some of the exclusive animes that they have without the money being there and the safety. The problem that TCGs have is when more money comes into a TCG, it just makes the minimum or the base entry point more expensive. What I mean by that is we saw this with COVID. When COVID hit, Logan Paul did, where he brought Pokemon TCG more to the forefront of people's minds, is that TCGs are a finite product. What that means is whoever has the most money generally wins out if there is a competition for the same card. So we saw that at stores. What would happen is the people with the most money or the most time would take all the product or take all the cards, and then people who wanted to get into it couldn't get into it. Then what they would do is they'd resell it to people who had the money but not the time. What happens is cards get more expensive, the product gets more expensive, etc., which starts to price people out because they don't have the time and they don't have the money to afford that stuff. And that's the big difference that we see with money being injected into hobbies. Money being injected into media and into anime is fine because there is no finite resource to those. More money being injected into a hobby creates a lot more problems, at least initially, because there's distributions, there's physical assets, there's a lot of logistics that have to be figured out and fixed, and the people who win are the people with the most money or the most time. Magic did some good things and then also some bad things to combat this type of logistical problem and issue that we have with more money coming into a hobby. So Magic the Gathering started to get a lot more popular. The story was just generally getting pretty good and a lot better. What they did was they started to create collector boosters. They separated the draft packs that people would use to play the game from collector packs that people would use to make money or just to kind of collect and own like really cool art, different art, whatever. And that was a good thing because what that did was now they had a product specifically for the people with more money who wanted to chase that rarity, but it left the draft packs available so that we could still do drafts. People could still buy their boxes without having a ton of money come in and take all of that available product. And so that is something that Magic did really well that worked out for a really long time and has been one of the reasons that even with like Final Fantasy and with big sets with tons of huge chases, collector boosters for the Final Fantasy set, insanely expensive. So hard to get. But the play boosters were readily available and it was still really easy to find that. And so they found a balance that Pokemon has yet to find where in a way they made it almost unscalpable. What we started to see was the cost of these TCGs going mainstream. There's more product fatigue because now you have draft boosters, now you have collectors boosters, then they made a new booster, and then they combined those boosters into a play booster. But that's just Magic and the hype cycles, universes beyond. Everybody, like the collector boosters open more finance brain people, more secondary market. Ultimately, this has cost Magic the intimate relationship it had with its community. Because while they did some things well, Magic has lost its identity in a way. You know, a game for everyone is a game for no one type of thing. And with product coming out as fast as it is for Magic, with all the different types of product for Magic. And then with the universes beyond, they're catering to such a wide audience. And yes, they're making a ton of money, but at what cost? And that's where it's kind of hard to see where that's going to end up here in the future. I feel like Magic is in the late stage of TCGs, but we see that Pokemon, Riftbound, One Piece, Lorcana, in a way, are kind of gravitating and doing the same things that Magic are kind of doing. I mean, let's take Pokemon, for example. We have so much fatigue right now. Hype cycles, product fatigue, corporate overload, as in corporate's not doing anything, Pokemon's not fixing anything, GameStop, all these stores raising prices, still not fixing anything. We're running into this issue where we're getting into a late stage TCGs. And here's the graph that I kind of designed showing what I think the future of these TCGs will be. Pokemon is no longer a tight-knit community. It is now a mainstream TCG. We have more finance-brained people. People open cards now, and they're like, oh, how much is this worth? Oh, should I sell this right now? It's lost its beauty in a way because everything is just about how much the card costs or how much the pack costs. It feels a lot less intimate. And overall, I feel like that's something that we're experiencing and that we will continue to experience with TCGs as more people than ever have decided that that's a hobby that they want to get into, whether it's Pokemon, Lorcana, Magic, Riftbound. TCGs are taking off. And there is some good things about it. But let me know what you guys think. If you want a longer video on this, if you want a more in-depth video about this, I would love to go over it more in depth, a little less scattered, a little bit more like data points. But in the end, I think it's something that is really good to think about. If you're in the anime community, let me know what you think about the little bit that I talked about and what you think about anime in the past and anime as it is now. I'm really curious to know what you people might think about that, because there is some good with how anime is now, but I think anything once it gets too mainstream starts to have a lot more negatives. I feel like the anime community and anime as a whole has been going down, and I feel like that's kind of where TCGs are going. Not that they're getting less expensive or that there's less hype. I just feel that once something goes mainstream that was never intended to be mainstream, it makes the hobby, the community, the product lose what was special about it, to where it's just like, oh yeah, you got Gucci. Oh yeah, okay, cool. Well, now, oh, you got a Pokemon card. Oh, you got the Chase. Oh, you got a PSA 10. Oh, it just doesn't mean anything anymore. But like I said, I'm curious to know what you guys think. But that's I guess we'll call that like History 101.